Happy Easter. My name is Becky Felton. I work with eighth grade girls in D teams. And today I'm going to do your devotion on Matthew 26. Today is Easter Sunday. So it's a fantastic celebration of the resurrection of Jesus. Our Lord is alive and on the move. And it's a great time to really reflect on what it means to be a Christian, what it means to have a God that still moves in your lives. So Matthew 26, there's a lot going on. Christian asked me if I would do a devotion, and I quickly volunteered, and we have to do something in Matthew 26. There's a whole lot going on in there. So just some highlights. I hope you'll read the entire chapter, because there's a lot going on. It's important information. It's I think probably one of the most intimate portrayals of Jesus. You see him, just the humanity of him. He's fully man in this. And reading the chapter, I kept kind of putting myself in his situation and thinking about how I would have felt. And it's just the totality of the situation. It's the end of his earthly ministry. So he knows that the crucifixion is coming. It's just an intimate portrayal of what's going on in the last hours and days of his life on earth. So a couple of, just highlights of things that happen in Matthew 26. You see the plot against Jesus hatched, where they're going to be celebrating Passover, and they scheme to have him arrested and tried. Jesus goes to Bethany and goes to the home of Simon the leper, where he is with Mary, who anoints him with expensive perfumes and oils. And this is a really just wonderful picture of relationship with the Lord. She takes the perfume and undoes the top and pours it, and I can imagine it running down Jesus's head, the oils running down his head, and it is worth like a year's wages. So it's super expensive, super, something that would be scarce. It's a big sacrifice for her to do that. And I think about how that is a great illustration of what our relationship is supposed to be like with the Lord. It's supposed to be loving him with abandon, loving him with everything you have. So I think that's just really a really interesting and really cool story. I think about it, and I think you put yourself in the situation. I feel like they probably would have had eye contact at some point, and just to see the adoration in her eyes when she looked at Jesus. I think that was, I think that's really neat. Other things that happen, we see that Judas is going to agree to betray Jesus. He goes to the chief priests and makes a deal to betray Jesus for 30 silver coins. We see the Last Supper, which is a really intimate picture of Jesus with his 12 disciples reclining at the table, enjoying their meal, and just having a very intimate time together. The other one thing I think that's interesting about the Last Supper is that I can imagine Jesus knows that that his crucifixion is nearing, right? And he knows what's going to happen. And I think about how, I don't know if you guys have ever felt this way, that something's going to happen and you just have this dread and this like pit in your stomach, this horrible feeling of what's going to happen, dread and trepidation, things like that. And I imagine that Jesus felt that way, and he felt that way, but he was in his group, his friend group. And you think about that, and I think about how alone he must have felt. And because he was alone with this, even though he told them it was going to happen, I think that they didn't get it. Has that ever happened to you, where you've been in a group but you feel alone with something? I think that is part of the humanity of God, part of the humanity of Jesus, that it makes me think that he knows how I feel when I feel that way. I've been in groups and I've been in situations where I feel very alone, and just a sense of dread if there's a situation coming up that I don't want to deal with. If it's something with a friend or my family or work or something like that, it's a really amazing portrayal, I think, of how human Jesus is. And we see that Jesus is going to predict that Peter will deny him 3 times before the rooster crows. We see that that actually does happen at the end of the chapter. And what I was going to talk about today is Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the intimate picture that that is of Jesus just being fully man and crying out to his Father, like, if it is your will, please take this cup from me, because he knows what's going to happen. And so I am going to talk to you guys about we're going to read together. I hope you'll read Matthew 26 fully, but today we're just going to talk about Matthew 26 verses 36 through 46. And so it says, then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, which would be John and James, along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and watch with me. Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Couldn't you men keep watch with me for even 1 hour? He asked Peter. Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away a second time and prayed, my Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. Then he came back. He said he found them again sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer. And then that's when we see that Judas comes into the Garden of Gethsemane and kisses Jesus on the cheek, alerting the mob to the fact that it was Jesus, and they take him away and arrest him. So I guess my question for you all is, when you pray to God, do you pray that it's his will and not your will be done? Do you trust that God will work to make things good in your life? I think that, especially given our current situation where we are in a very solemn time, we're in a time of the entire world has come to a screeching halt. I mean, not just Raleigh, not just North Carolina, not just the United States, the entire world, the entire globe has stopped in its tracks with the COVID-19. I can't think of any other time in history where, if you had said to me 2 months ago that my kid would be home from Carolina, that he would be doing remote learning, that we would be wearing masks, that Sarah Tate would be doing online learning, that we would go to the grocery store one at a time, I would have said, there's no way that's going to happen. But I do believe that God uses things for good, right? And so I believe that he will use where we are in our situation today to make us, mold us into better people, right? To be lights to him. And so I think about how I can use this time, right? Because there are no distractions. There's nothing going on, right? Like there's no group travel. There's no, we're doing church remotely. We're doing school remotely. I work from home, so that's not so out of the ordinary, but going to the grocery store is like once every 2 weeks, you got to run in, get some toilet paper and run out. So I do think that my question to you is, how are you using this time? are you praying that God's will be done, that he work for good in your life? And sometimes, at your age, I can remember being a teenager, you pray the things that you want to happen. And you think you know best. At least I think I know best. A lot of times I think I know more than what's better for me rather than what God thinks is better for me. But do you allow for possibility? Do you allow for the possibility that even the things that you pray for fervently are not the will of God? And can you look back once you've come through a situation? Can you look back and can you say, God was working in my life, but I didn't see it at that time? And then when you're on the other side of it, you say, God knew exactly what I needed when I needed it. And so I would encourage you all to think about that, to allow for the possibility. I know that we've had immense amounts of loss with your situation right now, especially high school seniors in college. I mean, what you thought your senior year was going to look like is not at all what it's looking like. But can you allow for the possibility that God is on the move and he's going to do amazing things through this time if you spend time in the word and spend time and just say, if it's your will, be done. Maybe not my will, maybe not your will, but maybe God's will. I think that it can turn out to be, at least my prayer is that it turns out to be just a sweet time with God where we've opened ourselves up to the possibility of what this can mean for us. So I hope you all have had a wonderful Easter. I'm so thankful for Rebecca and Christian, who've kept us so connected with our Zoom meetings, with our online ministry. I love that we're getting together with other churches. So I'm just thankful that we're all still a community right now. I hope you've had a wonderful Easter. I hope you've enjoyed our devotion. Do some prayer journaling. That's what I do. And then you can look back and you can be like, wow, I prayed those things and that's not at all what needed to happen. And then you can really kind of document and see where God leads you. So I hope you have a great day and thanks for spending some time with me.